All right. Sorry about that, everybody. Give me I'm double checking the audio levels myself. Let me know if it's working now. I think I have levels, so I think we're okay. No idea what. Okay, no idea what that was, but I think we're all right now. Sorry about that, everybody. Technology is a bitch sometimes. I think we're okay now. If anybody wants to give me some confirmation that we have audio, we are up and running. And this time for real, week 8 start sit. Apologies to those who asked questions earlier. Just go ahead and repost them. Go ahead and repost whatever you had. And I will make sure to get to it. Sorry about that. Unlisted the old link, so that should not be accessible right now to avoid any potential confusion. I think we're okay here now. I believe we're all good. All right. I'm going to dive right into it. Again, as everybody's trickling in, again from the old stream, go ahead and repost any questions that I didn't get to, and I will make sure that I answer it. Apologies for the technical issues. Okay. One flex in full PPR. Marquise Brown, Joe Mixon, Downs, Kareem Hunt, Tajay Spears, Michael Thomas. In full PPR of these names, I would go Mixon. I know you're concerned about the tough matchup. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. He's getting volume. The Chase Brown was put on IR, right? So any potential backup duties and opportunities for him are now out the window. Probably means Mixon gets even more work, sees even fewer breaks during the game. And he's a volume-based RB1. I expect the Bengals to improve coming out of the bye week. They've been off to a slow start this season. The offense was not exactly humming or got off to a strong start to begin the year. I got to imagine the bye week had to have helped. Joe Burrow gets a week off to rest the leg, the calf injury. It is a tough spot. It is a tough spot. But I would go Mixon. He's going to get 20 opportunities. I don't think he's had fewer than what I went over this earlier in the week. What's the number of opportunity? What's his floor been this year? Of course, as soon as Sleeper boots up is when I refresh it. I'm looking up Joe Mixon. Yeah. 16 opportunities week 1 or 16 touches week 1, 17 touches week 2, 20 week 3, 15 week 4, a whopping 29 week 5, and then 15 week 6. He gets 15 touches in every game. Chase Brown is out, so I have to imagine he could see even another 1 or 2 extra touches. Even in a tough matchup, although by the numbers, San Francisco can be had by running backs. They're not like the softest matchup in the league, but they're not the most shut down either, at least as far as running backs go. And this is a good offense. You expect the Bengals to be good. I would play Mixon. I would play Mixon in full PPR. I think he's got 3 catches or more in 4 of 6 games this year. That's the guy I'm going with. That's the guy I'm firing up. I'll take the bell cow in what we expect. We still expect the Bengals to be a good offense. I'll take the running back there. I'll take the running back there. I would go Mixon. I would go Mixon. Okay. Tank Dell, Darrell Henderson, Elijah Moore, or Dotson in the flex. Not Dotson. I just don't trust him. Moore is tough to trust as well with PJ Walker in there. I guess I would say it's between Tank Dell and Darrell Henderson, and I would probably is it full PPR? It is full PPR. I would go Tank Dell. It's a good matchup against the Carolina Panthers. Nothing scary about that matchup. Um, Stroud has shown a lot of poise and a lot of ability in his first few games of his career. I would go with that. I would go with Tank Dell, especially in full PPR. I would go Tank Dell. Good matchup against the Carolina Panthers. Um, Houston has had a lot of success throwing the ball with Stroud. Stroud looks really good already. And Robert Woods is out. So Dell should be on the field for most of the snaps, for most of the offensive snaps. I would go Dell. I would go Dell. Let's see. Need a flex between Thielen, Henderson, Foreman, Rice, and Roshan. Is this full PPR? I mean, you probably just have to fire up Adam Thielen. I don't think there's any. I think Adam Thielen has, at least for now, I would say for at least the next few weeks, has removed himself, has separated himself from a lot of other um, flex options. The dude has been a wide receiver one. He's the only consistent option on the Carolina offense. I would go Thielen. I would go Thielen, and I don't think it's particularly close. I really don't. Even in half PPR, I would go Thielen. I think he's separated himself. Like, all of those guys are nice flex options. Thielen feels like I mean, is he must start at this point? I mean, he's killing it. I know. Forget it. I mean, last week was the bye week, so whatever. I mean, dude is a top 10 wide receiver on the season in points per game. I mean, Thielen. I would say he's separated himself in a big way. I don't think there's any question. I think if you have Adam Thielen, you need to find a way to get him into your lineup by any means necessary. Yeah. I would say Thielen. I mean, he's killing it so far this year. Anybody who thought he was cooked after last year, I mean, I don't know. He must have heard those. He must have heard that. He's taking it personally. It feels like he's absolutely playing incredibly great, incredibly good football right now. Thielen. Yeah, not worried about any coaching changes. Even if there are coaching changes, it's like this is the one thing that's working for us. Let's keep going back to it. Thielen. Greg, AB, what's going on, guys? Good to see y'all. Thanks for coming in. And apologies again for the audio issues, having to reset the stream. Appreciate y'all's patience having to move over here. Hopefully, those who had a question asked when I had to shut it down are able to rejoin this one and repost. But I think we're all set now. I think we're all good to go. And again, I said it off at the top of the other stream, but not this one, just in case anybody is coming in and is new or not familiar with the process. If you are a member of this channel, one of your perks is that you do jump the line from a question perspective, so I will jump down to my members. If you are feeling so inclined, you don't have to, but if you are feeling generous enough to offer a super, that will also be a line jumper. Otherwise, I just ask that everybody sit tight. I will get to everybody, but I'm going to jump down to members and supers as a perk of asking questions and for the purpose of the chat for the start sit help. I'm not worried about any one individual unless it was basically Chris Jones. I'm not worried about any one specific guy being in or out for the Kansas City Chiefs. They are greater than the sum of their parts. That's a great defense. They are the most improved defense in the NFL. One of the best defenses rest of season, not just because they're much improved. They already have a chance as, like, even if they were a mediocre defense, they have a chance each week to be an opportunistic defense because Patrick Mahomes just just because Patrick Mahomes gives his team leads. But now they're actually good. They're actually really good. I'm just firing them up. And it's going to snow. It's going to snow in Denver tomorrow. We're going to get an October snowstorm football game. That's going to be awesome. But, I mean, if the offense is slipping and sliding out there, I mean, I guess it could work both ways for the defense. But, I mean, the weather is a great equalizer there. I would say it's actually maybe helps the road team a little bit more. It eliminates it neutralizes home field advantage a little bit because teams are playing in some bad weather and some elements. I would fire up the Chiefs. Throwing the ball is going to be a little bit tougher tomorrow. Yeah, I'm firing them up. I'm firing them up. No concerns. And AB, you drop Elijah Moore for Dalvin. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I don't care. Like, Dalvin Cook can request a trade all he wants. Who would want him? Why would you want a 2023 Dalvin Cook at this point? I wouldn't. I know Elijah Moore has left a lot to be desired, but he's an every down player for the Browns. Dalvin Cook is nowhere close to that for the Jets. That's Breece Hall's backfield, definitively. I would just hold Elijah Moore. If the best option is Dalvin Cook, I would just hold Elijah Moore. There are probably other players on the wire that are worth taking a look at. And if you want to list a couple, in case you're thinking about it, if you're set at wide receiver, AB, and you're just like, screw Elijah Moore, I don't need this guy. You want to take a chance on a random running back, that's fine. If you want to list any, go for it. But for me, Dalvin Cook does nothing for me at this point of his career. That's Breece Hall's backfield, and that's not changing. Yeah, not worried about Dalvin Cook. As far as trying to trade for Adam Thielen, I mean, I'm not trying to be facetious here, but yeah, good luck. He's on fire right now. He's an insane value given where he was drafted relative to the production he's putting up. You're gonna have to give up a piece that you probably are not gonna want to give up to get him, unless somebody is loaded at wide receiver and is in desperate need at running back or another position in general. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. Yeah, be curious to know what the asking price is. Um, it's tough to trade for excellent value for excellent values because you're going to have to give up a really strong piece, and it's going to be tough to justify that. And yeah, Dylan, I don't. Here's the only thing with James Cook. This is the silver lining I can give people with James Cook. It was a Thursday night. It was a Thursday night game. And teams utilize backfield committees. That's the majority these days. The majority of teams utilize a backfield committee. I feel like that gets amplified even more on a short week. Teams are more likely not to run their running back into the ground on a short week. They're more likely to mix in the backups, the change of pace guys. That's why Latavius Murray got as many opportunities and was on the field as frequently as he was. That is the kiss of death of Thursday night games. This is why I hate Thursday night games. Unless it almost feels like unless you've got a bona fide, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, Saquon, You know where I'm going with this, right? Brees Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs. Unless it's like one of those guys, the backup on Thursday night is just gonna mix into the rotation more than if the game was played on a Sunday. And that's kind of it. I mean, I maybe should have utilized a little bit more caution because knowing that on a Thursday night that's more likely. That being said, a guy like James Cook in that offense, sometimes it's tough to shy away from that in what looks to be a good situation. He had an opportunity inside the 10. Unfortunately, it didn't turn into a score. But you're going to see more. You're going to see even more of a committee on a Thursday night than you would on a Sunday. That's the biggest issue. That's the biggest problem. AB Watson or Sutton in half PPR. Watson's your upside play, and I probably would just go Watson. Um, Outside of Travis Kelce, it's kind of tough to trust any pass catchers for Chiefs Broncos tomorrow. It's expected to be a lot of snow. I think Adam Schefter tweeted about it a little earlier today. Let me see if I could pull that up. What is the weather expected to be in Denver? Well, it's going to snow, but like, what are we looking at here? Forecast, yeah. Adam Schefter tweeted this out about 5 hours ago. Forecast for Sunday's Chiefs-Broncos game in Denver calls for a high of 29 degrees, a low of 13, and 6 to 14 inches of snow. I would be curious to know if there's going to be wind in that game. Basically, other than Travis Kelce, it's going to be tough to trust anybody tomorrow. Okay, 10-mile-per-hour winds. That's not terrible. But the weather makes it a little bit more challenging. I would probably just play Watson. He is the upside play and simultaneously maybe the safe play anyway because of the snow in Denver that's expected tomorrow. I would probably just go with the guy who doesn't have that added extra concern that is the weather. Not high winds, not very high winds, so that alleviates the concern a little bit. But the range is 6 to 14 inches of snow. That is a wide range of outcomes. Sounds like there's going to be a decent amount of snow regardless. I would just go Watson. I would just go Watson. Yeah, I would just go Watson. Nothing scary about the matchup either against the Vikings. Sutton, it's a little bit more challenging going against the Chiefs. Steven, thank you for the Superman. Very kind of you. That's much appreciated. Between Dell, Nico, is that Deontay Johnson and Henderson? Nico Collins. Just pulling some stats here from the great Graham Barfield of Fantasy Points. If this helps, all credit to Graham Barfield. He's a major crutch for data and information. Follow him on Twitter. He's not even a colleague of mine or a coworker. I'm way beneath him. But he's great for data and some individual breakdowns of different players. But the Carolina Panthers are allowing league highs on a per route basis from a production perspective to wide receivers. And Collins is the team's wide receiver one. I would say Nico here. I would say Nico here. I can't fire up Tank Dell over Nico Collins. I mean, could Tank Dell have a little bit more of a productive day than Nico? Sure, that could happen. But Nico is the wide receiver one for Houston. Nico is the first read for CJ Stroud. on most of his dropbacks. I would say it needs to be Nico Collins. Deontay is in a good spot as well, but Nico's in a better one and has been, I mean, small sample size. Deontay hasn't played much because of the hamstring injury, but Nico coming out of his bye week, rested. Houston's ready to go. Nothing scary about a matchup against the 0-7 Panthers. I would probably just play Nico Collins and hope for the best. He's in a great spot. It's a great matchup. Stroud is throwing the ball incredibly well right now, and Nico is his wide receiver one. I can't fire up Tank Dell over Nico Collins. I can't fire up Henderson over any of these receivers, to be completely honest. I could fire up Deontay over Tank Dell, but at this point, I don't think I can fire him up over Nico. I think it has to be. I think it has to be. It has to be Nico Collins. I think it has to be Nico Collins. As far as Cooper or Downs, so this one's interesting. Cooper had one really good game with PJ Walker, 4 for 108, I think, and then last week he bottomed out with 2 for 22 against the Colts. So we got Jekyll and Hyde, right, from Amari Cooper. We had both ends of the spectrum. Meanwhile, Downs had like a coming out party last week against the toughest matchup that you could possibly get in the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have been a shutdown defense this year, and Downs killed them. Indianapolis is playing New Orleans. You figure Marshawn Lattimore is gonna be on Pittman. So Downs should get plenty of opportunities. One-on-one coverage that doesn't involve Lattimore. I would say Downs is your safe play. That's probably where I would go. Cooper is maybe more of like an all or nothing play if you feel like you need to play a little desperate. You can't call Cooper your safe play with PJ Walker because we just saw him go 2 for 22 last week. Now, he had a good game week 6. Cooper did. He had a good game week 6, 4 catches, 108 yards. That's really good. But you're talking about opposite ends of the spectrum from a production perspective, which makes it a little hot and cold for Amari Cooper. So I would say he is all or nothing this week. If you think you need upside, if you think you really need to swing for the fences, go for broke, then maybe go Cooper. But honestly, you might want to just play it safe and go Downs. You might just want to play it safe and go Downs. Like Pittman will see Marshawn Lattimore. Downs should be able to avoid him. And if they put him in the slot, which is where he's been operating, that's a good matchup by the numbers. I might actually just say go Downs, Steven. Maybe just go Downs. I would say Cooper is an all or nothing play that would reek of desperation, that is feasible, but it's a tough spot, and it's a hot and cold situation based on the production that he had week 6 and the production that he had last week. I don't know if I want to mess around with that. I might just go Downs. I would go Nico somewhat definitively for your first question, and I would go, I think I'm kind of talking myself into just go Downs over Amari Cooper. We don't know which Amari Cooper's going to show up, and it's not Cooper's fault. It's the inconsistency of the quarterback play for the Cleveland Browns right now. Nico and Downs are my 2 separate answers to the 2 separate questions. And I think that's what I'm going with. Appreciate the super, Steven. Very kind of you. Happy to expand on that in any way if you prefer, or if you want any more context. Just let me know. Appreciate it. And AB, as far as Watson, the problem with trying to get him off your roster right now is you're selling low. You might as well just hang on to him and hope that he can put a ceiling week together. Probably just finding his, he's finding his sea legs. He missed a couple of games to start the season with the hamstring. Remember, Christian Watson did nothing for the first half of the season last year. He didn't do anything. And then he caught absolute fire in the second half. Now, touchdown regression is a hell of a thing, and he had a lot of those in the second half of last year, but he's a really talented player. He's the most talented option the Packers have at wideout. You probably just want to hang on to him. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback last year, and it's Jordan Love now. So drop off in quarterback play. But Watson is talented enough where it's like, I don't want to sell low on the guy. You know? I don't think I want to sell low on him. You might as well just hold and hope he can bounce back. All right, back up to the top. Should you pick up Dalvin Cook? Nah. No. I'm not feeling Dalvin Cook. The only reason Dalvin Cook's name is out there is because he asked to be traded. But who the hell wants Dalvin Cook in 2023? I mean, he's not going to become the lead ball carrier. Even if he did get traded, he's just going to join a committee. He's not about to become the lead back anywhere. Multiple injuries would need to happen. I mean, so far this year, 13 for 33, 4 for 7, 8 for 18, 5 for 16, 6 for 23, and 3 for 12 in week 6. He's not doing anything. He's not doing anything. He totaled almost 60 yards of offense week 1 when Breece Hall was still um, being eased in. It took him 16 touches to get 59 yards. That was his best game. Yeah, no, I can't advocate adding Dalvin Cook anywhere for anything. Can't do it. Can't do it. As far as Dell, so Dell Smith and Jigba, Deontay, or Olave. I mean, you got to go Olave here. He's gonna play, right? Even though he got arrested. Um, you got to go Olave here. He's the most talented player of this bunch. Um, but he didn't have a huge game on Thursday night against the Jags, but this is a good bounce back for him. He's still seeing really strong usage, big target share. I think you got to go to Olave. You got to go back to the well with Olave. Over Dell. Smith and Jigba. We can't play Smith and Jigba as long as DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are both playing. We just can't play Smith and Jigba. Just can't play Smith and Jigba. Deontay, I'm more, Deontay is one of those dudes that can eventually become a guy that is just an automatic in your starting lineup. I'm going to wait one more week on that. Whereas we know Olave is the team's wide receiver one, and Tank Dell is. I like the spot that Tank Dell's in tomorrow, but he's his team's wide receiver two. And Olave is just the better player. He's the best player of this group. I would just go Olave. I would just go Olave. Sit one between Higgins, Ridley, Deontay Johnson, and Tank Dell. Hmm. Higgins has done very little to inspire this year, but I think you need to put him in positive game script or negative game script. They should be having to throw against the 49ers. Man, it's tough to sit Ridley, even though he's been very hot and cold, very up and down. Um, I like the spot that Tank is in, but I probably need to ride on those more proven players with they've got more of each one of those first three guys has much more of a track record than Tank Dell does. Tank is in a great spot, but sometimes I just need to respect the pedigree of the other players on my roster. I'll say the first three is who you're starting: Higgins, Ridley, Deontay, and then Tank is the guy on the bench. I think that's what I'm doing. Oh, it's DJ Moore. Okay, Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for clarifying. That always helps. Thank you for the clarification. I might my brain might default to somebody else. So, well, you have to play DJ Moore for sure. He got decent, backup quarterbacks tend to hyper target their top weapons, and we saw DJ Moore get a ton of targets last week. Nothing scary about the matchup against the Chargers. So even with Badgett back in there for one more week, I would fire him up. I would go with Higgins, and I would go Deontay. I would go Deontay slightly over Tank Dell. Um, Again, it's a pedigree thing. I'll fire up Deontay. Came back last week from the hamstring injury, 5 catches for 79 yards. Pretty damn good considering he missed missed the last 4 games. Can't really ask for much more than that. 5 for 79. That's a pretty good indication that he is restriction free. I'll say Deontay. At home. They're at home, right? The Steelers? I think they are. They are. Yeah. DJ Moore, T. Higgins, and I keep saying Deontay. Sorry. My head is going to Deontay, even though you clarified DJ Moore. Ridley over Tank Dell. Same argument. It's a pedigree thing. I think it's a good bounce back spot for Ridley. Steelers are not a scary matchup in the secondary for opposing wide receivers. So I will go back. I'll trust Ridley for one more week. I know it was bad last week. I'll trust Ridley for one more week in a bit of a better spot. He's had 10 days off, right? The Jags played on Thursday night. I'll say Higgins, Ridley. Ridley has 10 days to rest. A little bit more favorable. Tank's off the bye week, but Ridley is just more proven. I will go with the pedigree here. I'll go with the pedigree here. I think it's a good bounce back spot for Calvin Ridley. He is a little frustrating, but he has had a couple of top 10 outputs at wide receiver this year. So all is not lost despite the inconsistencies. I would sit Tank Dell. I would sit Tank Dell. That's who I would sit. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification. My head went to Deontay even after the clarification. Higgins, Ridley, DJ Moore, those are the guys that I'm firing up. Steven, thank you for the second super. Much appreciated. Very kind of you. How do I feel about Pierce and Lockett this week? So Pierce is on the road against the Carolina Panthers. Probably got to fire him up. Singletary got more opportunities for the bye week, and it's possible that he continues to stay involved. But it's a great matchup. It's a great matchup. Pierce has at least 13 touches week 1, 17 week 2, 17 week 3, 25 week 4, 21 week 5, and then before the bye week in week 6, he had 13. So 13 being the low watermark in opportunities for Dameon Pierce, and he has probably the easiest matchup on his schedule this week against the Carolina Panthers. They're getting gashed on the ground. I think you have to fire up Pierce as a flex option. As far as Lockett, he's kind of become a boom-bust play recently. The production hasn't been there the way it has been in years past. It's not because of Smith and Jigba, although Smith and Jigba is, running plenty enough routes, but it's been kind of tough pulling teeth for Tyler Lockett outside of week 2, including last week. He only had 4 for 38, but he's still on the field 70% of the time or better in every game this year. So he's out there. It's a tough matchup against Cleveland, though. It's a tough matchup. So between the two of them, if it's half PPR, I feel better about Pierce than I do about Lockett. If it's one of those guys or the other, I would go Pierce, even though it sounds like Singletary is going to maybe turn this into a little bit more of a committee than Pierce owners would prefer to hear. But you don't get a much better matchup than against the Carolina Panthers. So I think whereas you don't get a much tougher matchup than against the Cleveland Browns for Tyler Lockett. Tough spot for Lockett. He's actually probably more along the wide receiver 3 line than wide receiver 2 line, given the inconsistency. Pierce is he's a low end RB2 at this point. It sounds like Singletary is going to remain a factor, going to remain involved in that backfield. But if there's ever a matchup to roll the dice on Dameon Pierce, it's this one tomorrow against the Carolina Panthers. It's this one tomorrow. Between those defenses, the Falcons get some combination of Will Levis and Malik Willis tomorrow. So that feels pretty good. Seattle is at home, and the Falcons are on the road. Seattle's at home against PJ Walker. I like that spot quite a bit. For Seattle. And then the 49ers are hosting the Bengals, who haven't been the type of offense that we've come to expect from Joe Burrow this year. But they are coming off their bye week. You got to figure the rest is helping. Joe Burrow's had an opportunity to take some time off to rest the calf injury, so that's going to help. 49ers are at home, but they're playing what we expect. Despite the offensive shortcomings for Cincinnati, we expect them to be a good offense this year any given week. They are running out of time, though, to prove that that is something that we can consistently continue to predict and believe in. Falcons have a great spot, but they are on the road. And the Seahawks are at home against a backup quarterback. That's probably where I would go. I would probably go Seattle. I'll take my chances against PJ Walker at home. Second straight road game for the Browns. Tough spot for them. I would say in order, you know what? Seattle, San Francisco is the better unit than Atlanta, even though they have the tougher matchup. I might just side with the better unit. And then the Falcons are third. But I would say the 49ers are closer to the Falcons than they are to the Seahawks if I were to rank them. I would probably just fire up Seattle at home, defending home turf against a backup quarterback. I'll take my chances with them. I'll take my chances with them. So, Pierce, RB2, maybe on the low end RB2 spectrum, just because of the production hasn't necessarily translated from the opportunities, but this is a great spot for Pierce. So you got to think he should be able to do something against the Panthers. Lockett is a tough to trust wide receiver 3 in a tough matchup, and his inconsistencies are noted at this point. He's had one big game week 2 against the Lions, one decent game, I think it was week 5, I think, and then a bunch of forgettable weeks other than that. And then I'll take the Seahawks defense over the Falcons and 49ers. Thank you again, Steven. Very kind of you. Much appreciated. All right, let's see. Again, for anybody just jumping in, I will be jumping around. I'll get my members first. If you feel generous enough to offer a super, that will be a line jumper as well, but you don't have to. I will get to everybody. I just ask for some patience as I work through. One of the perks of the channel, if you're a member, is that you will get your questions answered first. Greg, to clear bench space for what? Like, to clear bench space for what specifically? There's not a wide receiver of that group that I want to drop. It's too early to worry about Amari Cooper. Like, yes, Deshaun Watson's shoulder injury is noteworthy, is concerning rest of season, but it could turn around. There is still enough time left, enough season left where we could see a bounce back. And Cooper himself is talented enough to just kind of not worry about. He's one of those dudes that you kind of just have to keep hanging on to keep rostering. I would, yeah. My question to your question is, who are we clearing space for? Is there somebody on IR that you need to activate? Because I don't want to drop any of those guys. I guess it would have to be Downs. You're not dropping Debo. You're not dropping Nico. You're not dropping Garrett Wilson. You're not dropping London. You're not dropping Cooper. If you had to drop one, I guess it would be Downs. But at the point where I don't want to drop him either. Although he would be the drop here of those names. He would be the drop here. What's going on, Callie? Good to see you, man. One flex for half PPR. Rice, Foreman, Henderson, Watson. So Roshan is back for the Bears. That makes Foreman a little less enticing. Rashee Rice is going to be playing in a snowstorm tomorrow. I would say Watson is your upside play. And I'd probably just go that route. Rice in the snow, a little tough to trust. Foreman is a little tough to chart because Roshan is expected back tomorrow. And then Henderson is just in a really bad matchup against the Cowboys. I would probably just go Watson for the upside and hope for the best. I think I would just go Watson. Okay. And Greg, just to wrap up this thought, and then I'm going to go back up to the top. Um, Downs would be the drop if you really need to, but obviously don't do it until this week. Till after this week. We'll worry about week 9 when we're up against it and we absolutely have to. Yeah, Downs, I guess. He's the guy you're going to have to drop for to make space, but you also have the luxury of seeing how these games play out this week first before having to make that call. So we can certainly revisit that this coming week after the slate. But tentatively right now it would be Downs. All right, let's see. I got A, B, and Greg's questions earlier. I think I'm at Tommy's question now. Foreman, Henderson, or Hunt? I'd probably just go Kareem Hunt here. I would think the Browns run the football a decent amount tomorrow. Jerome Ford is on the injury report. He's questionable. It didn't sound like he was going to be able to play for a couple of weeks. I don't know. Did anything change as far as his status, his Jerome Ford status? Questionable for Sunday's contest. Now he's got a chance to play after it was looking like he would definitively miss. I'd probably just go Kareem Hunt. Between Hunt, Foreman, and Henderson, I'd probably just go Hunt. It's not a great matchup, but Ford at best could be incredibly limited. He wasn't expected to play at all. Now he's questionable. Apparently his recovery has been a miraculous one. So he could get involved, but on the injury report, and he previously wasn't expected to be able to play this week. Even if he does, it could be in a limited role. So I would probably just say Hunt and hope for the best, even though the matchup isn't great. But Hunt should be getting most of the touches out of the Browns' backfield tomorrow. I'll say Hunt. Foreman or Miles Sanders in full PPR? Foreman? It's Foreman. Um, the Chargers are not that scary of a matchup. The only pause here, obviously, is that Roshan Johnson is expected back for the Bears. It's not a great matchup by the numbers, but the Chargers don't exactly strike fear into anybody on defense. They've got good names on the defensive line, but it hasn't necessarily translated. I guess Foreman. Sanders is just tough to trust. I am the wrong person to ask about Miles Sanders. I'm not a big Miles Sanders guy. Chuba Hubbard has, I think, forced a full-blown committee. They might just ride the hot hand approach. It's not a bad matchup. Houston is giving up production to opposing running backs. But I mean, Sanders has done very little recently. He's done very little. He's only got one game this year where he averaged over 4 yards a carry. And in that game, he fumbled. That was week 5. The only game where he averaged over 4 yards per carry was week 5 when he went 7 for 32. But then also in that game, he fumbled. I just don't trust Sanders, man. I just don't trust Sanders. I just don't trust Sanders. I would probably just fire up Foreman and hope for the best, although Roshan is back. Um, and then just jumping down, Callie, if you like the Vikings defense this week, that's fine. It's not a bad play. It's not a bad play. If the Seahawks are still out there, I prefer them. But if they're not, the Vikings are not a terrible play. They are on the road, so I don't love it. I only play defenses on the road if they are absolute bona fide stud units. The Chiefs, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the 49ers, the Browns. Although I don't love the spot they're in tomorrow against Seattle. But it is a division game. Those games can tend they can tend to be a little bit more low scoring, not always, but sometimes. Maybe fewer points are scored. And yes, Love obviously has struggled recently. They're not a bad stream. Vikings are not a bad stream. They're not a bad stream. And if you feel good about it, then make it happen. Where am I at? Taysom Hill or Jake Ferguson? Hill has got the Colts. Ferguson has the Rams. The Rams are getting cooked by opposing tight ends. I would probably go Ferguson. Rams are giving up top 5 production to opposing tight ends. I would say Ferguson is about as good of a streaming option as it gets. I would say Ferguson is about as good of a streaming option as it gets. I would play Ferguson over Hill. Full PPR, Ramondre Stevenson or Tank Dell. I think you got to go Stevenson. He's been better the past couple of weeks. He had a rough patch for a few games there, weeks 3 to 5, but he's bounced back nicely week 6 and 7. 6 catches last week for 51 yards, 5 catches the previous week for 24 yards. That's good for 15 total touches each week, each of the past 2 weeks. He's been better. Dell is an upside wide receiver 3. Stevenson is an RB2. I lean the running back there. I lean the running back. I would lean the running back. Stevenson over Dell. That's where I would go. Even in full PPR. Because Stevenson catches passes himself. He has 11 over his past 2 contests. Full PPR, Thielen or Gibbs. Ugh. They're both great options. If you can only play one, I think you got to play Gibbs. Donta Foreman just had a 3-touchdown output against the Raiders. That's Gibbs' Monday night opponent, who, by the way, he's at home without David Montgomery. You can't get people make fun of me for this answer sometimes, but like you can't play both because Thielen has been a wide receiver 1. Thielen's been a wide receiver 1. I don't want to sit Adam Thielen, but if you have to go between him and Jahmyr Gibbs, I think you have to play Gibbs. I don't think you have a choice. I think you have to play Gibbs. Came through in a big way last week. No David Montgomery once again. I don't know what the status is of Craig Reynolds, but it doesn't matter, to be honest. No disrespect, but I think it's got to be Gibbs. I don't want to sit Thielen, though. If there's a way to get him in there, if there's a way to get him into the lineup. Need one for the flex. Najee, Michael Thomas, Kareem Hunt, Tajay Spears, Smith and Jigba, Jerry Judy. Uh, Najee feels kind of gross, but Najee came through last week. Najee came through last week. I think you have to go with Najee. They're at home. It's a gross start, but Najee continues to get the volume. He continues to get the volume. 14 carries for 53 yards. That's not good, but he scored a touchdown and he caught 3. I mean, I think I just got to chase the volume here and hope for the best with Najee Harris. I don't love it, but I think he's your safest floor play of those options. I think he's your safest floor play there. Yeah, I think you just got to go Najee and hope for the best. We want to start Tajay Spears soon, but they need to freaking trade Derrick Henry if the Titans know what's good for him. And then Falcons or Lions defense this week? Probably the Falcons. The Lions are at home, but Jimmy Garoppolo is back. So that makes them a little less exciting. The Falcons are going up against either Will Levis or Malik Willis. That feels like a great spot for them. I would probably roll the dice on the Falcons. They are going to be playing a backup quarterback. And it's possible that Will Levis is just straight up not ready yet. And if Malik Willis has to get in there, oof. Good luck, Tennessee. Good luck, Tennessee. I would go Atlanta. They're facing a backup quarterback no matter what. I would go Falcons. And speaking of, is it true that the Titans are keeping Henry? I will believe it when I see it. I don't know that they have the balls to do what is right, which is to trade Derrick Henry to an actual contender because the Titans are not a contender. They're paying they are at the bottom of the AFC South with no chance to do anything of relevance this year. And they're paying a 29-year-old running back a shitload of money. You should be offering to pay that full salary to a contender and try to get a single third-round pick back in return. Because with the amount of money that he is owed this year and the fact that he's a free agent at the end of the season, you're not going to get that much of a return. It's because it's possible that whoever tries to acquire him is getting a rental. Teams don't want to spend that much money when they know that it's a rental. If I'm the Titans, I'm going around the league and I'm saying, "Hey, I will pay 75% of this salary if you take Derrick Henry and give us a third-round pick back in return." I don't know that you can get that, but you can at least get in the ballpark if you are willing to eat salary, which they should be willing to do. Eating salary for a bad team should not be a big deal, should not be a difference maker. And I know NFL teams are stubborn, right? They don't want to give up on seasons. They don't want to give up on a potential, even a lost season, because it could mean a coach is getting fired. Players lose opportunities when they come from losing teams, whether fair or not. I get all that, but if you're the Tennessee Titans, you got to be able to look at the writing on the wall and say, we're playing for 2024 and beyond. You're worse than every team in the division. And you're paying a 29-year-old running back in the last year of his deal a buttload of money. You should be willing to eat a decent amount of that salary to try to get a day 2 pick in return in a deal and not a second round pick. That's not happening. So, is it true that they're keeping him? Teams say stuff to the media all the time that turns out to not be true. I guess I would wager that they do keep him because, again, I don't think the Titans have the balls to do what is right. But hopefully they come to their senses. The worst case scenario is they beat the Falcons this week and think that they can and give themselves some type of false hope. That would be the worst case scenario for the Tennessee Titans. I have a hard time believing that that happens. Even Desmond Ritter on there. If you lose at home to Desmond Ritter, you better be looking. You better take a good long look in the mirror and say, we need to hit the reset button. But we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. We got a dynasty trade question from CSK. You're giving up a mid first in 2024 to get T. Higgins. So Higgins is still only 24 years old, so he's perfectly fine to acquire in a rebuild. If you know it's going to be a mid first round pick, so say it's like somewhere in that 5 to 7 or 8 range, in SuperFlex, what we don't know is who is T. Higgins going to be playing for in 2024. If it's a big drop off from Joe Burrow, that's going to make him a little less enticing unless he signs somewhere where he is the bona fide wide receiver 1. Where might that be? Carolina? Ugh. Well, I guess that it could be okay with, if Bryce Young takes a step forward. I mean, what other teams? New England? I don't want that. The Cardinals? That might not be awful. Depends on who has cap space. It's a fair trade on paper. But if I'm in a rebuild, there's a decent amount of built-in risk. With T. Higgins. New England has money to spend. The Colts have money to spend. That might not be a bad spot for him. The Panthers have money to spend. He could end up there. The Giants have money to spend. He could end up there, but that doesn't inspire a ton of confidence either. It's a fair trade on paper. And even in a rebuild, I don't mind acquiring a player like T. Higgins, who will still just be 25 when the season starts next year. I would caution, though, if it's a long rebuild, if you're expecting to be tanking for a couple more years or you don't expect to be good for a couple more years, you could be acquiring a player who, by the time you're ready to compete, he'll already be 27 years old. If you're in a long rebuild. If you think you can turn around and start competing next year with a 25-year-old T. Higgins as one of your wide receivers, then okay. All right, fine. But if you're if you're looking at your roster and you're saying to yourself, I'm also not going to be competitive in 2024 and I might not be competitive in 2025, then maybe I just keep the first round pick. But it is a fair trade on paper. It's a fair trade on paper. Henderson, Stevenson, or Garrett Wilson in standard scoring? Um, Stevenson? Probably Stevenson. You're losing out on catches, so Garrett Wilson is a little bit of a tougher sell. Stevenson has bounced back nicely, at least from a fantasy point perspective the past couple of weeks. And they're going to need him tomorrow against Miami if they want to even try to keep this a competitive game. They got to throw the ball to Stevenson. They got to run the ball with Stevenson. They got to utilize him in a variety of ways if they want this to be anything close to a competitive matchup in the fourth quarter against the Dolphins. It is a revenge game for the Patriots for whatever it's worth. They lost week 2 against the Dolphins in New England. Miami has also been a bit of a house of horrors historically for New England, so it's not a great spot, but kind of got to throw that out the window each and every instance. Standard scoring, I would probably go Stevenson. Darrell Henderson had a nice game last week. He figures to get decent volume again tomorrow, but it's a tough matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. It's not out of the realm of possibility that the Cowboys blow the Rams out and, those running backs become obsolete. I would say Stevenson. I would say Stevenson in standard scoring. Della, if you're still in here, sorry about the confusion. I threw my own brain for a loop on that question. Thank you for your patience. Let's see. I got a new Blue Yays. Welcome in. Thanks for stopping by. Kelsey or Eckler rest of season in half PPR. Is this like you could trade one for the other? Is that like the larger question here? Do you have Kelsey and you could trade him for Eckler? Is that the situation here? Because obviously you have a massive, massive difference maker at Travis Kelsey, because of the value he brings to the tight end position in a way that so few others do. And in half PPR, you are getting those points. Depends on your running backs. It depends on who your other running backs are. I would need to know that. I would need to know who your other running backs are. And the pick swap, like, is this keeper? Is this dynasty? What's the is it a keeper league? So it's a pick swap for next year's keeper draft, or is it a pick swap in dynasty? And then what would the swap be? What's happening, Iron? Good to see you, bro. Okay, you'd get a decent pick swap in a keeper draft. I mean, no. No. You have Walker, you have Kamara, you have Jacobs. I love Eckler's. Let me say this. I love Austin Eckler's schedule for the rest of the season. It's favorable matchup after favorable matchup. I love the schedule for Austin Eckler rest of season. And you figure that he's going to be a major, major factor for the Chargers and for fantasy teams alike. But you've got 3 pretty damn good running backs. and you have the difference maker at tight end in Travis Kelce. If you were hurting real bad at running back and you had like Sam Laporta that you could just kind of, maybe you drafted Kelce with your first pick and you got Laporta cheap or late, like, all right, fine, I see the thought process here, but you've got really damn good running backs, Walker, Kamara, Jacobs, and then you have the freaking dude at tight end in Travis Kelce. I say no. I would not do this because I guess my other follow-up question is that I maybe should have originally asked is, now who are you pivoting to? Like, are you pivoting to Sam Laporta? Who are you pivoting to at tight end? And honestly, I mean this in a way of like I don't mean this like in an insulting way. It's almost like I want to say I almost don't care because you have the dude at tight end. You trade the fourth for Andrews. See, like, okay, fine, but also let's keep this as uncomplicated as possible. And just I would just keep I would just keep Kelce. I would just keep Kelce. He is once again receiving outrageously insane volume because the Chiefs have an emerging interesting guy at wide receiver in Rashee Rice, but then everybody else is just a bunch of dudes. It's a bunch of guys. I mean, we can play this game all day long with Travis Kelce. Since he came, he missed week 1, so whatever. Only had 4 for 26 week 2, but he did score a touchdown. But like since then, he's back to doing Travis Kelce things. 7 for 69 and a touch, 6 for 60, 10 for 67 and a touch, 9 for 124, 12 for 179. He eats the Chargers for lunch no matter when he plays them. 12 for 179 and a touch. No, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Yeah, right. I kind of just if it's not like a hell yeah, then it's a no. When you're talking about Travis Kelce, the difference maker at tight end, and it's not like you're hurting at running back. You've got those are really strong options at running back. Walker, Kamara, Jacobs, those are really good options at running back. If you were hurting bad at running back, okay, fine, I could see it. I would say no. I say no. I would say hold the pieces you have. I say hold the pieces you have. It's a good collection of talent. I would just hang on to it. I would just hang on to what you built so far. It's a good collection of pieces. You have Lamar. Okay. I mean, understood, heard. I mean, is that Andrews trade definitive? Do you know that'll happen? You said you're thinking about trading the fourth. Like, will the person who has Andrews go for it? There's like layers to this. You know, will that person who has Andrews entertain that offer? If they will, like, okay, all right. I see the logic here. But I would need some more definitive. If I know for a fact I can get Andrews for a 4th round pick in a keeper league draft, and then as a result pick up Eckler, but then again, okay, so here's the last layer to this. Is one of the, if let's say you acquire Eckler, and then you've got Eckler, Walker, Kamara, and Jacobs, is one of those 4 dudes on your bench every week? Is it 2 running backs and a flex? Because then that de-incentivizes me even more. I don't want to put one of those guys on the bench if I don't have to. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so now now you're adding to like yourself a potential headache each week. Yes, bye weeks, yada yada yada, but like now you're adding a potential headache to who do I start at running back each week? because I got a bunch of studs. I would just hold. You got good options, you got good pieces, you got good players. I would stay put. I would stay put. I don't want that headache of like, okay, great. Now I have Eckler, Walker, Kamara, Jacobs. Awesome. I'm loaded at running back, but now I got to bench one of these dudes each week. That's a game I don't want to play. That's a game I don't want to play. So hopefully that helps. That's just my 2 cents. That's my perspective. Again, always, 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 at the end of the day, this is for everybody. It's your team. Do what you want to do at the end of the day. I can only offer like a thought process here of like what I would maybe do if I was in your shoes. And if you think you have these moves locked in and you can make them happen, then sure. And you feel good about it, then okay, fine. But I would probably just stay put. All right. Where am I now? I got through Callie. I got through Greg. What should you do with CD Lamb? Hold him. I mean, based off name recognition alone, you can get a good piece, but he's not performing right now. And if everybody else is in your league is paying attention, you're going to get 75 cents on the dollar. I would rather hold CD and hope he can turn it around than sell him for 75 cents on the dollar and potentially regret it when if and when he rounds into form and starts putting up the wide receiver 1 numbers that we have come to expect from CD Lamb. He's only averaging 7 targets a game. Like, come on, Cowboys, figure it out. But if the rest of your league mates are keyed in, they're plugged in, they're paying attention, you're not going to get good value for CD Lamb. You're not going to get good value for CD Lamb. I would just hold him. Sorry, Antonio, I did skip your question. My apologies. Start one between Charbonnet, Downs, Amari Cooper, Warren, or Moss. Not Charbonnet with Kenneth Walker off the injury report. I don't think I would play Moss either because he was added to the injury report on Friday. I always try to avoid late adds to the injury report. I don't like that. Doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel comfortable. I like Downs more than Amari Cooper. I would say Amari Cooper is a Hail Mary this week. We got the good version of our Amari Cooper with PJ Walker in week 5, 4 for 108. We got the bad version of Amari Cooper, we got the good version of Amari Cooper week 6 with PJ Walker. We got the bad version last week, week 7. So 4 for 108, great. 2 for 22, not so good. So Amari Cooper is range of outcomes is all over the map. Downs feels safer. And then, sorry, who's the other guy here? Oh, Warren. Who everybody, we really want to predict and project that Jaylen Warren is eventually going to take that backfield over. But they're still giving Najee Harris 15 opportunities a game. I would probably just play Downs. He put together a real strong showing last week, probably in the most difficult matchup that he'll face all season against the Cleveland Browns. I think I would say Downs. This is like a process of elimination for me. Not Charbonnet because Kenneth Walker's off the injury report. Not Moss because Moss himself was added to the injury report late. Amari Cooper's range of outcomes is wide with PJ Walker, and that's a dangerous game to play. I would say he's a Hail Mary. If you're like, I'm a 20-point underdog and I just need to swing for the fences, then okay, fine. Amari Cooper, If you shoot for 20 and you only get 5, but a 10-point outing wouldn't have helped you win anyway, then okay, so be it. I would probably just play Downs. And then Warren is a flex RB3. Downs is more of an upside guy who could be mean, I think he's been a top 20 wide receiver over the past month, I believe. So I would just kind of ride that. I would ride that wave. I'll say Downs. Sorry about that, Antonio. Apologies for missing the question. But I would go Downs. I would go Downs. And then okay, and then just to wrap up my thoughts on CD, I would hold if you can get a premium piece in a trade, great. I just don't know that anybody's going to offer it because CD has not been CD this year. So I would just hold, most likely. Trade Nico for and Mostert for AJ Brown? Absolutely. Absolutely. You can make that happen? Do it. Do it. Absolutely. Trade Mostert for Nico? 100%. AJ Brown is like he's the top 3 wide receiver right now. He's the top 3 wide receiver right now. It's him, Tyreek Hill, and I guess like Diggs. And I would put Jamar Chase up there as well. AJ Brown is a top 4, we'll say top 4 wide receiver to be fair to guys like Chase and Stephon Diggs. Like Hill, Brown, Diggs, Chase, studs. Top 5 dudes any given week. AJ Brown is on an absolute heater right now. You can get him for Mostert and Nico. Yes. If you're trading AJ Brown for Mostert and Nico, then no. If you're acquiring AJ Brown, smash accept. Smash accept. $100. If you are getting AJ Brown, 100%. Yeah, absolutely do that deal. Let's see. I haven't. Oh, sorry, Iron. I missed. I missed your questions. Apologies. Do I start Najee, Javante, Gus, or Jeff? Is Mostert gonna miss? He's not on. He's expected to play. All right, that's what I thought. I thought I saw that earlier. I know he's on the injury report, but I was like, I think he's expected to play. So I'm not worrying about Jeff Wilson. Between Najee, Javante, and Gus, I'm ruling out Jeff Wilson here because it sounds like he's going to play. Man, Gus has a great matchup against Arizona. Javante has looked better recently, but the Broncos are a mess on offense, and they're playing a good defense in Kansas City. Although Javante really started to, I think his game against the Chiefs was the first time he averaged 5 yards a carry so far this season. So it's like he's rounding into form. And you figure he's going to get a ton of work in the snow tomorrow. And then Najee is against Jacksonville. He's about as boring as it gets. I would say Javante, Iron. I would say Javante. He's looking good. He's looking much improved. In the snow, the Broncos are probably going to want to run the ball tomorrow a good amount. I love the Chiefs' defense, but they can be had a little bit on the ground. and Javonte had a decent showing against them in their last matchup. I'll say Javonte. I'll say Javonte. On 35% of the snaps against the Chiefs in week 6, Javonte had 10 carries for 52 yards, and that was on a Thursday night. Um, Pretty good considering the lack of opportunities, the lack of snaps. And then last week, he went over 50% of the snaps for the first time. He had 15 carries for 82 yards, and he caught 3 balls. And he had a touchdown that was called back due to a holding penalty that had not that wouldn't have stopped Javonte from scoring. So I'll say Javonte Williams, Iron. I'll say Javonte. And as far as Michael Thomas or Calvin Ridley, oh yeah, nicely done with Dalton Kincaid in DFS. He came through in a big way. Um, Between Ridley and Michael Thomas, kind of like I don't mind the bounce back spot for Ridley this week. The Steelers are, again, this is help from the great Graham Barfield and all of his research. The Steelers are allowing the third most yards per game to opposing outside receivers. Calvin Ridley is working predominantly on the outside. Christian Kirk is the guy who's getting the slot snaps for the Jags. So this is actually a pretty good matchup for Calvin Ridley. I think I would go Ridley over Michael Thomas. More I think about it. I would go Ridley over Michael Thomas. So Javonte over those other running backs, and I would go Ridley over Michael Thomas. I think Ridley's in a decent bounce back spot based on the matchup. Should get more than one half PPR point or whatever he did last week. For all the shortcomings, Ridley does have 2 top 10 performances this year. So all is not lost with Calvin Ridley. Okay, where are we at? PPR, Javonte, Pierce, or Tank Dell in the flex. Javonte again. I think Javonte is starting to round into form in a way that, like, I don't want to necessarily directly compare him to Breece Hall, but remember, both suffered season-ending injuries last year, and both were getting eased in to start this campaign. Now, the difference is Breece Hall just had a clean ACL tear, and that was it. Javonte suffered a torn ACL, LCL, and MCL. He had a major, major knee injury last year that ultimately I was concerned about his effectiveness this season in general, but he has looked better recently. He had 15 carries for 82 yards last week, and he had a touchdown called back on a holding penalty that would not have mattered. Javonte would have scored anyway had that not been called. So, people who play fantasy don't care about the points that aren't scored, but I'm not holding that lack of, those 6 points against him. He would have scored regardless of that penalty. And if there is one thing you can do against the Chiefs, you can run on them a little bit. And Javonte has done that already. He did it in week 6. He had 10 carries for 52 yards. That's not a good output for fantasy, but averaging 5 yards a carry any given game is good. And now they're at home in the snow where they're going to have to probably rely on the run a little bit more. I'll take Javonte. He's rounding into form. We're starting to see him come back a little bit. He got off to a slow start. That's expected, right? Again, remember with Javonte Williams, torn ACL, torn LCL, torn MCL. It was going to take him some time to start to round into form. think we're starting to see it now. I think we're starting to see it. I'll go Javante. Let's see. And then PPR flex, Pittman, Tank Dell. Oh, is this the same or is this different? Another is this might be a different league. Pittman, Dell, Javante. Is that Deontay? Is that Deontay Johnson? I don't know who the W is. Or Palmer. So in full PPR, Pittman's playing in a dome against the Saints. This is probably where I would go Pittman, even though he's going to see Lattimore. That's a tougher matchup for Michael Pittman. But he is his team's wide receiver 1. And he's been good with Gardner Minshew. Well, he only had 2 catches last week, but that was in a tough matchup against the Browns, and he turned it into 83 yards and a score. So only 2 catches, but in a brutal matchup, he delivered. He came through. Week before, 9 for 109. And the week before that, 5 for 52 on 7 targets. And then the first, he had a down week 4, but then weeks 1 through 3, 8 catches, 9 catches. I'll go Pittman here in full PPR. Javante over Dameon Pierce and Tank Dell, but Michael Pittman in full PPR over Javante Williams. If that makes sense. Pittman, then Javante, and then Pierce and Dell are kind of in the same range for me. Deontay Johnson. Okay. I like Deontay Johnson a lot, but I'll take Pittman. He's been outside of that week 4. He had clunker, only 1 catch. This is a slightly better matchup than he had last week. In full PPR, I'll take Pittman, but I will take Javante over anybody not named Michael Pittman. Let's see. Zay Flowers or Nico Collins. I have this same situation in a league. I'm playing Flowers. It's the Arizona Cardinals. Nico's got a great matchup too. He does. Flowers is in the better matchup. Arizona's getting killed by opposing wide receivers. 25.5 fantasy points per game allowed to opposing wide receivers. That is a ton. That is so many points. Flowers looks like the dude at wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. It's not Odell Beckham in his advanced age. It's not Rashad Bateman. It is Zay Flowers. Today in 2023, he is the Ravens' best option at wide out, and Arizona is getting scorched by opposing wide receivers. I love Nico Collins. I like the spot that he's in. I think he's going to do just fine tomorrow, but I'm in this same situation. I'll take Flowers over Nico, and I'm starting him. It's in the very same situation. I hate to have to leave Nico Collins on my bench, but if it's for Zay Flowers, I got to do it. As far as Goddard versus Laporta, this one's a lot closer. Not that Flowers and Nico aren't close, but for me, it's like I'm going to play Flowers because of his matchup. In the matchup against the Commanders in week 4, Goddard had 2 catches for 25 yards. Not good. However, Goddard has rounded into form the past couple of weeks. Past 3 weeks, actually. He's got 18 catches over his past 3 games. 117 in one game against the Rams for a touchdown. Only 42 yards against the Jets, but 5 for 42. Decent production for a tight end. And then week 7 against Miami on Sunday night, 5 for 77 and a touchdown. For Laporta, he's been decent, but not quite as good the past month as Goddard. It's really close. It's really close. But Goddard has been more involved in the Eagles' offense recently, and Washington is giving up decent production to the tight ends over the past couple months, or past couple weeks, excuse me. Slight nod to Goddard. Slight nod to Goddard. Um, yeah. Flowers over Collins, Goddard over Laporta. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. Iron, I'll take Ridley over Lockett or Cooper. Well, would I take him over Lockett? Lockett has been tough to trust this year. I don't think I can do it. I think Ridley's got a good matchup this week. I'll take him in the bounce back. Lockett just has a brutal matchup against the Browns. He is at home. He is at home, but he's a little bit more boom bust this year than he has been in years past. I'll give a slight nod to Ridley. Tough call, but I would give a slight nod to Ridley. Cooper is all or nothing. Cooper is. We got the good Amari Cooper with PJ Walker in week 6. We got the bad Amari Cooper in week 7. His range of outcomes is really wide. I'll say Ridley. As far as the Sam Hubbard against Trey Hendrickson, good old IDP. Not typically something that I play. But I can grab some numbers here really quickly for you, Iron. Just bear with me for a second. Hubbard, they're both they're both in the same matchup, man. It's like they're both on the same line. For me, it would just come down to who's been the more productive player so far this year. Hubbard's got 31 tackles, 10 assists, and 3 sacks. Hendrickson has 7 sacks so far this year. Fewer tackles. If you need the win, I guess I would play the upside and fire up Hendrickson. He's the one who's been getting the sacks. I would play the guy who's getting the sacks. I'll just go Hendrickson, but I'm not a good person to ask for IDP, to be completely honest. All right, where are we at? Let's see. I think we're at Freddie's question. Welcome, Freddie. I see you're new. I'm starting Stevenson over Kareem Hunt. Stevenson has just been better the past couple of weeks. He's been better. It's a revenge game for New England. I don't know how much that matters. The Dolphins are just the better team. But there could be a little extra motivation for the Patriots tomorrow. Try to make this a more competitive game. They're going to need Ramondre Stevenson to do that. The opportunities have been there for Ramondre Stevenson. 15 total touches last week, including 6 catches. 15 total touches back in week 6, including 5 catches. I would fire up Stevenson. And then Kirk in the rain. Is that Christian Kirk? Is it gonna rain in Pittsburgh tomorrow? Let me double check that. Guess it wouldn't totally be surprising this time of year. This is when the weather starts to change in the Northeast and the Midwest. Pittsburgh is some combination of the two. It doesn't look like Jacksonville's not playing, or yes, they are. Jacksonville's playing Pittsburgh. Is that Christian Kirk or is that Kirk Cousins? Is that Christian Kirk or Kirk Cousins? I don't know about any rain issues. Is it going to rain in Green Bay? I mean, Christian Kirk, I'm firing him up. Kirk has been rock solid. Like, let's just chase the squeaky wheel. And no Zay Jones once again for the Jags. Is that the case? Is it Christian Kirk? Yeah. Nah, you gotta fire up Kirk. You gotta fire up Kirk. He's been a rock solid wide receiver too for over a month now. You gotta fire up Kirk. You gotta fire up Kirk. Christian Kirk has been money for the past like 6 weeks. Gotta fire him up. Let's see. Appreciate everybody's patience as I move through this. I know there's lots of questions, so just sit tight. Would I sit Tua for Goff? No. I think this is a bounce back spot for the Dolphins. They're at home. Tua has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to throw the football to. Tua has been insanely good this year. The Dolphins kind of fell flat a bit last week in Philly. They get some home cooking this week. It is a division opponent, but Tua's been incredible this year. He's got the best wide receiver in football to throw the ball to. Jalen Waddle's not too bad either. Being a little, selling him a little short. Jalen Waddle is excellent. Not as tough of a matchup. New England does not pose the same pass rushing threat that Philadelphia does, especially without Matthew Judon. And they're also down Christian Gonzalez. So, like, the Patriots are down key pieces on their defense. Tua has been better week to week anyway. And at home, I'll take Tua. I'll take Tua. Goff's at home as well. It's a good matchup, but Tua has been better, and his weapons are better, top to bottom. Amon-Ra St. Brown is excellent. Sam Laporta is pretty good. Looks pretty good. I mean, the combination of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that just kind of does it for me. It's a tough matchup, but I'm chasing how well Tua has played this year. I'm personally chasing Tua. It's close. It's not like it's not a contest. It's not like it's anywhere. It's not like Goff isn't in the same realm. And Goff could certainly do well in a good matchup against the Raiders. But I'll take Tua. He's just playing a little bit better. I'll take Tua. And then Blue Jays, I got your question. Jacob's got to start two in full PPR between Higgins, Ridley, and Lockett. I would roll the dice on Higgins. I know it's been gross for T. Higgins this year. Only one good week, but Bengals are coming out of their bye week. Maybe they're healthier. Maybe Joe Burrow's he's a week removed. Had a time to rest the calf injury. He's had some time here to get right, get normal, get back up to the Joe Burrow that we expect. It's not a great matchup, but you expect the Bengals to have to be aggressive on offense in a tough spot on the road. I'll go back to the well with Higgins. And then I mentioned this earlier, I think Iron was the one who had a Ridley or Lockett question as well. I'll go. Both have been somewhat disappointing this year relative to expectations. I think this is a good spot for Ridley tomorrow. The Steelers are giving up a lot of production to outside wide receivers. That's Ridley. I think it's a good spot for Calvin Ridley tomorrow. And the Jags have had 10 days off because they played on Thursday night in week 7. Higgins and Ridley. I'll play Higgins and Ridley. Ridley and Lockett have both been tough to trust this year. I'll take Higgins and Ridley. I think it's a good matchup for Ridley tomorrow. Steelers give up lots of production to outside wide receivers. Thoughts on the Bears running back situation? Yeah, I mean, with Khalil Herbert not in the picture, but with Roschon back in the picture, Foreman might have earned the opportunity to start tomorrow. Roschon figures to be more of a long-term factor in for the Bears and their plans. So, Roschon's probably going to get as many opportunities as he can handle, but in his first game back, maybe they give Foreman a few more opportunities tomorrow. And Foreman probably earned that after his performance last week. If I had to guess, Foreman starts, but this is a committee. The start might just be a formality. It is difficult to fire up either one of them with anything more than just flex expectations. It's going to be, it wouldn't be surprised if this is just like a 50-50 spot. I would say it's tough to trust. I would say it's tough to trust both Bears running backs tomorrow. I would say it's tough to trust both of them. They're both flex plays, and I would say more on the low end. More on the low end flex. The Bears are low end flex plays. Okay, where are we at? I do play Dynasty. So we can certainly get into that. I do play Dynasty. I'm in 2 Dynasty leagues. One is a 1 quarterback that is switching to SuperFlex in a couple of years, and one is already a SuperFlex league. But first, non-PPR, pick one between Hunt, Foreman, Wilson, and Roschon. I'll take Hunt here. Like I just said, the Bears' backfield is probably going to be a difficult one to project and predict before tomorrow night. Also, for all of the shortcomings of the Los Angeles Chargers, they are better than the Chicago Bears. I would think game script favors the Bears passing game tomorrow. That makes Foreman and Roschon even more risky, even more dicier. Hunt, meanwhile, even if Jerome Ford can get in there, he's questionable. He had a bad ankle injury. I think he was in a boot last week. So while he is questionable, the fact that he's got a chance to play is amazing for Jerome Ford, but I can't imagine he's anything more than a change of pace guy. Probably limited opportunities tomorrow. So I'll take Hunt. And then with Jeff Wilson, it's just Mostert is expected to play. Of those four names, Hunt is the most likely to lead the backfield. So I got to chase the volume. I'll say Hunt. I'll say Hunt. Okay. Dynasty questions. PPR, tight end premium. Nice. I have tight end premium myself. Brees Hall for Laporta and a second round pick. It depends on, and let me see. Okay, you're okay. This helps. The roster helps with some context. It is super flex. You have Burrow, Stroud, Bryce Young, nice. St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Higgins, Addison, good. Your tight ends are Gesicki, Okonkwo, Irv Smith. Okay. Yeah. Who are your other running backs? Brees Hall's the best player here, but in tight end premium, Laporta and a good draft pick is pretty fair. I mean, are you competing? Are you rebuilding? Brees Hall's the best player in this trade, regardless. If you're rebuilding, Laporta and the second makes sense on paper, but I mean, Brees Hall's the top 3 dynasty running back. I would say probably behind Bijan Robinson and depending on how much you value age or how much you factor it against a running back, you could argue McCaffrey is still ahead of Brees Hall. Unless you're rebuilding. If you're rebuilding, then Brees Hall is a more valuable player than Christian McCaffrey, of course. But Brees is a top 3 running back if you're competing, and he's probably a top 2 running back if you're rebuilding. Laporta, meanwhile, is a top 5 dynasty tight end at this point. I won't put Kelsey over him. I won't put Andrews over him. And out of respect of the talent that is Kyle Pitts, I would still put Pitts over Laporta. But honestly, he's forced his way into the conversation with would you rather have TJ Hawkinson or Sam Laporta? I don't think that's an unfair question in Dynasty. Obviously, this year, I think you'd probably still slightly lean Hawkinson. But for Dynasty, I mean, Laporta's right there. So I see the value of it. No other running backs really. So then this is probably closer to a rebuild. Which would make me slightly lean. Slightly. I don't want to discount the value of Brees Hall, who is excellent. But in tight end premium, especially in a rebuild, Laporta and a second might be a little bit better value for what your specific team is looking for. Like, let's call a spade a spade. If Joshua Kelly is your other starter, that's not a contending team. That's not a team that can win the championship. You just don't have the pieces. I would maybe try to squeeze one more pick out of the trade and just be like, look, you're contending, you're competing, and I am giving you a top 3 dynasty running back who is still only, 22, 23 years old? I know, in tight end premium, Sam Laporta's awesome. But I mean, Brees Hall is going to be an RB1 for the next 6 or 7 years. Laporta should be a top 5, top 6 tight end for the next 10. If all goes well, if all goes as planned, hopefully. Speaking of dynasty assets, there goes Marvin Harrison being a monster. Ho-hum. Little crosser for a 16-yard touchdown. That guy might be, maybe not. There's more of an argument in SuperFlex, but he might even in SuperFlex be the 101 in dynasty drafts. I know Caleb Williams. I know Drake May. I know, but man, he looks like he's a bulletproof prospect. I would, because of your situation, sober money, I would say the value for you is Laporta and a second. But man, Breece, I think you can be greedy. If you have Breece and you're looking to trade him away, I think you can be greedy. I think you can be greedy with him. He's a top 3 dynasty running back. I think you're allowed to be greedy there. But Laporta and a second, that's a pretty good return in tight end premium. Is this new? Michael Thomas is now questionable for week 8. Uh-oh. Michael Thomas has been added to the injury. This is new, guys. Michael Thomas has been added to the injury report with an illness. He is questionable for tomorrow's game. Now, an illness obviously is not the same as an injury. Maybe it's not quite time to panic just yet. I don't think I've recommended Michael Thomas tonight for anybody. I know he's popped up in the start-sit questions, but that might sway things a little bit. If you were thinking about Michael Thomas, it's been reported he is added to the injury report with an illness. That throws a wrench in his availability. Just keep an eye on that. So, yeah. So in Dynasty, Breece Hall, he's the best player in this deal. Laporta and a second looks like a pretty good value. If it's a late second, though, I would honestly ask for like one, like even if it was like a third in 2025 or something, just get like one more piece out of it. I think you're allowed to be greedy with a player like Breece Hall. He's a top 3 dynasty running back. Or top 3 or 4. All right. Carr, Minshew, or Love? Carr's got the Colts. Minshew has the Saints. They're playing each other. And then Love has the Vikings. And Carr has not looked good. Carr has not looked good, but the numbers the past 3 weeks have not been bad. 300 yards and a touchdown last week against the Jags. Over 300 yards passing the past 2 games. And then in week 5, he had a 2-touchdown output against New England, even though he was under 200 yards passing, but we'll take the touchdowns. Minshew had a spectacular game last week against Cleveland, 305 yards and 2 touchdowns, along with 2 rushing scores. I can't chase that production. 2 rushing scores from a quarterback who historically let's just say he's not Josh Allen. He's not running in for touchdowns that frequently. I'll say Carr, and then Jordan Love has just not looked very good recently. I'll say Carr. He's got Chris Olave. He's got Michael Thomas. He can dump the ball off to Alvin Kamara. He's got Taysom Hill, whatever that's worth. I'll say Carr. He hasn't looked great, but the numbers have been consistent the past couple of weeks, so I'll say Carr. Carr over Minshew, Carr over Love. Carr's numbers. Carr hasn't looked good from an NFL perspective, but from a fantasy perspective, the numbers have been there for the past couple of weeks. Should you trade Amon-Ra St. Brown for Cooper Kupp? It's a coin flip. I don't know that I would. Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, Sam Laporta looks great, but Cooper Kupp has legitimate weekly competition for targets in Puka. Like, Puka made Kupp an unusable, like, wide receiver 4 last week. And I don't expect that to remain the same every single week. You expect Cooper Kupp to get his most, if not all, weeks. But Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't have that same problem. Like, even in a terrible game for the Lions last week against the Ravens, he still had 13 catches for 102 yards. He's got 5 catches in every game this year. He's got double-digit catches, Amon-Ra does, the past 2 weeks. And as much as I love Sam Laporta, I mean, he's a tight end. There's not like Puka Nacua is playing great for the Rams right now. He's a legitimate threat on the outside for a lot of work. I think I'd slightly rather, it's close. It's a coin flip. Like, 1 for 1, it's an incredibly fair deal on paper. It just comes down to personal preference. I think I'd rather have Amon-Ra. And he's on the better team. The Lions are better. I know the Lions got blown out last week by the Ravens, but the Lions are better than the Rams. So sometimes I just like want to have like who is the player on the better team, you know? To a fault, I think that's something that I like to chase. So I would say no. It's close. It's a coin flip. It truly is. I would say it's a true personal preference between Amon-Ra and Cooper Kupp for the rest of the season. It's a true personal preference. I think my personal preference is Amon-Ra. And congrats to Austria for the Euro Championship. They're going to be a force in that flag football, was it the 2028 games, the 2028 Olympics? That's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see. Let's see. You're starting Joshua Palmer right now. But you've got some other decent options. Deontay. Christian Watson. Wow. I might just play Palmer. I mean, obviously, Mike Williams is gone. And when Mike Williams doesn't play, Palmer historically does well. And the Bears are getting killed by opposing wide receivers. I guess so is there an injury status for Josh Palmer? Questionable. Do you have anybody else in that game? You have Roschon Johnson in that game that you could theoretically pivot to in the event that Palmer can't go. But Palmer did get a limited practice in on Friday, which is a good sign. That is a good sign. I think I would wait on Palmer and hope that he plays. I don't really want to pivot to Roshan Johnson. However, if you want to wait on Palmer, which I think I would do, you can put, and since he's in your flex, you could take Palmer out of your flex if he can't play, and you could replace him with Roshan, who's playing in that same game. So you do have a legitimate alternative that you can pivot to if you want to wait on Palmer on Sunday night, which I think you should do. So I wouldn't change anything there. I wouldn't change anything there. Keep Palmer in your starting lineup, and you can swerve to Roshan Johnson if Palmer is ultimately ruled out. Atlanta or Miami as your defense, it's close. It's close. I kind of like Atlanta's defense, even though they're on the road. They're playing either Will Levis or Malik Willis. I think I would roll the dice on that. I think I would roll the dice on the Atlanta Falcons. I would roll the dice on the Atlanta Falcons. They've been a pretty good defense. They're good at stopping the run. That's something that Tennessee wants to do, but that is a strength of the Falcons defense. And they're getting Will Levis, and Malik Willis might mix in. I'll take my chances with that situation. Mac Jones been playing a little bit better the past couple of weeks? I feel like he has. Yeah, played a little bit better. 25 of 30 for 272 and 2 touchdowns last week. Slight improvement. I'll take the Falcons. Let's see. PPR pick 2 between Waddle, Addison, and Taylor. Ugh. I hate having to bench Addison. I hate having to. Man, these are all really good options. I think I got to play Taylor, especially if Zach Moss is out tomorrow. Zach Moss was a late add to the injury report, so I think you got to fire up Taylor. And then Waddle's got the Patriots. Addison has the Packers. Man, that's brutal. That's a true coin flip. Addison's on a bit of a heater. Had a spectacular game Monday night against the 49ers. I'm just pulling up for Waddle. In the matchup against New England week 2, it's his opponent tomorrow. Waddle had 4 catches for 86 yards, and I'm pretty sure he left that game early due to injury. That's what caused him to miss week 3. So he was on his way to a big game. And in his past 3 games, 6 for 63, 7 for 51, and a touchdown, 5 for 35 and a touchdown. That's pretty good. Addison has, I think, been better. Well, he went nuclear last week. Addison did 7 for 123 and 2, 3 for 28 and 1 week 6. 6 for 64 and 1 week 5. He has touchdowns scored in every game but one that he's played. Slight nod to Addison. It's tough. In full PPR, like all three of those guys are rock solid regulars in most lineups. The fact that you have to sit one of those guys sucks. I would go the last two. I don't want to sit Jalen Waddle. He's awesome, but Addison is on fire right now, and he's scoring touchdowns at a pretty solid rate right now. And Taylor, I think Taylor has re-entered the you just have to fire him up category. He's been awesome. I'll go Addison and Taylor. It's tough though. You're talking about three regular starters. Palmer, Cooper, or Hollywood this week. So Palmer's on the injury report. He's questionable after missing Wednesday and Thursday, but he did get a limited practice in on Friday, so that's good. Meanwhile, Hollywood has a revenge game against Ravens. I think I give the slight nod to Hollywood only because we don't know if Palmer's going to play on Sunday night. He's questionable. He did get a limited practice in on Friday, which is a good sign, but he missed Wednesday and Thursday. And a questionable player on Sunday night without a viable backup is dicey. I think I might just play it safe and play Hollywood Brown. And he's in a revenge game against the Ravens, so there should be a little extra incentive there. I'll take Hollywood Brown. Let's see. You have Hurts, Hall, Pollard, Evans, Ridley, Jacobs, Andrews, Geno. I mean, what would I in theory what I would do? I mean, if you're looking for a way to upgrade, you could use a wide receiver. I don't really want to trade. I don't really want to trade any one of those running backs. I certainly don't want to trade Breece Hall, but if you're looking to make a move, you can trade any one of those running backs for a bona fide wide receiver one. I would go around. I would see who has a stud wide receiver and could use a running back. Who in your league has a couple of maybe two? Who in your league has some stud wide receivers but they're hurting at running back? I guess I would take Jacobs and see if you can turn him into see if you can turn him into Amon-Ra, turn him into Keenan Allen. Hell, you might be able to do something like Jacobs for CeeDee Lamb plus something else. Maybe try to do that. Try to buy low on CeeDee Lamb and as a result, because you're giving up a running back, get a piece back, get 2 for 1. Like try to buy low on CeeDee Lamb. Use Jacobs. Get CeeDee Lamb and a depth running back in return, something like that. That's something like use Jacobs because I don't really want to give up Breece and I don't really want to give up Pollard. Not that I want to give up Jacobs, but if you're trying to make a move, give up Jacobs and maybe one of either Palmer or Hollywood and get a stud wide receiver back and a depth running back. Something like that. And then, I mean, we're hoping that CeeDee Lamb can turn it around. of course. But then to that point, you should be able to get a solid second piece in a deal like that. Yeah. Browse around your league, see who needs a running back, see who has some stud options at wide receiver, and talk to that person. That's what I would do. You gave, let's see, you gave Brees Hall, you gave Gibson, you gave Komet, you got Hawkinson, Mixon, and the Cowboys defense. I don't love giving up Brees Hall, but that's not bad. You got a huge upgrade at tight end. You gave up an unusable running back in Gibson, and you got one of the better fantasy defenses. I like the buy low of Joe Mixon. I think that's fine. I don't think you got robbed. I like Brees Hall. Brees Hall's the best player in this trade, but the other two pieces you gave up are slop. The Gibson and Komet are doing nothing and are unlikely to do anything rest of season. Consistently, anyway. I think that's fine. Oh, Gibbs? You got, oh. Okay, I said, okay, I see Gibson, but it says, oh, Gibbs. Uh, okay. Yeah. I don't like that as much. If it was Gibson, I'd like it a lot more. Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking like, oh, Montgomery's going to come back and Gibbs is not going to be as effective, like, okay, fine. I mean, you still got a big upgrade at tight end going from Komet to Hawkinson. That's significant. You got a good run. I like Mixon as a buy low. I do like Mixon as a buy low. And the defense is fine to grab. Hall and Gibbs. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would be able to pull the trigger on that myself. Brees is a top like 8 to 10 fantasy asset rest of season. You're going to need Mixon to really outperform Jahmyr Gibbs rest of year for that to work out. Which could happen because David Montgomery is going to come back. So we'll see. We'll see. I think we're coming down close to the end of the chat, at least right now. For now, start two between DK, Waddle, Flowers, and Tank. Let's see. Metcalf has Browns. Tough matchup, but DK Metcalf is one of those matchup-proof guys. Flowers is in a beautiful matchup against the Cardinals. And Waddle's in a decent spot against New England. I don't think you can factor in Tank Dell here. I mean, it's two of those three stud. It's between DK Waddle and Flowers. I think Flowers has to be one. Arizona's getting scorched by opposing wide receivers. So I think you have to do Flowers. And then I guess I don't want to sit DK Metcalf, but Waddle has the easier matchup. And he was on his way to a big day against New England before he picked up the injury against them week 2. I think I would go Flowers and Waddle. I don't want to sit DK Metcalf, but it says start. You can only start 2, right? So you're putting a really good player on the bench regardless. Do you start 2 receivers or do you start 3 receivers? I know some of y'all have probably heard this spiel from me over the course of the season so far, but y'all's homework, if the leagues that you care about the most, if you only start 2 wide receivers, this is for everybody. Your homework is to get your commission to add that third wide receiver slot, and I will be your lawyer to make that happen. More fantasy points scored is more fun. Taking advantage of the players that you draft is more fun. Having to leave guys on the bench makes it less fun. 3 wide receivers should be the default for starting lineups, not 2. I'll say it as many times as I have to. You start 3. You start 3 receivers. Okay, so maybe you have another obvious guy. All right. So that's good. Okay, at least you start 3 receivers. That's good. But of these 3, there's a good player that's going to be on the bench. I guess it would be Metcalf for me because of the matchup against the Browns. I don't want to have to sit him, but I think Flowers has to be started in a beautiful matchup against Arizona. And I'll take Waddle, who was on his way to a big day against New England in week 2 before the injury. So maybe we ride that wave. A.J. Brown. Okay. Pretty good collection of wide receivers. Might want to move one of those guys for a running back. Although if these are your running backs down below in the same league, then you're probably just fine. Henry, Taylor, Swift, Jones. So I love Aaron Jones, but I think there's enough of a question mark here with him that rules him out for me. Between Henry, Taylor, and Swift. I mean, Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. I don't think you could put Derrick Henry on your bench ever. That's tough. Henry, Taylor, and Swift are all in like the must-start category for me. Swift runs behind the best offensive line, but he has the lowest touchdown upside because of Jalen Hurts. Henry's in the toughest matchup. The Falcons are pretty good at stopping the run. And then Taylor, I think, is really, really rounding into form. Henry and Taylor. I don't want to bench Swift, but again, same thing. If you have to bench one, I guess I'll take the guy. I'll put the guy with the least amount of touchdown upside on the bench in Swift, even though he runs behind the best offensive line. I'll say Henry and Taylor. Henry and Taylor. Trade Mahomes and Addison for Tyreek and Fields. No. I mean, no. Tyreek is incredible. Probably the number 1 asset for fantasy for the rest of the season. But Fields is hurt, and outside of a couple performances, looks bad. He looks bad. Fields does not look good when he's been in there anyway. He doesn't look good. He is the reason for he's been sacked a ton, and it's not on the offensive line. He holds the ball too damn long. I think he's struggling to see the field. I don't want that frustration. If I have Mahomes, I don't want the frustration that comes with Justin Fields, especially because I don't know when he's going to play again. No. I say no. I would just hold Mahomes and Addison. Obviously, you'd rather have Tyreek Hill than Jordan Addison, but also I think obviously you'd rather have Mahomes than Fields. I don't trust Fields. I've wanted to believe in Fields. I've been a Fields supporter. I just don't trust him. I just don't trust him. I just don't trust Justin Fields. So no, I would just keep what you got. Uh so half PPR, you need a running back. You have Henderson in there now, but you could switch to either Chuba or Roshan. So Chuba has reportedly forced a full-blown committee, and it's a pretty good matchup. Henderson figures to be the main guy. I would say Henderson is an RB3. It's not a terrible matchup against Houston, but Miles Sanders is back. So it could be a full-blown committee. I guess I would leave Henderson in there. If he's the guy you have in there, I guess maybe just leave him in there. Um, Roshan and Foreman probably it's like a split backfield in a game where the Bears are probably going to be trailing, which makes it tough to trust both of them. Henderson's in a bad matchup, but I would presume that he is the dude for the Rams for whatever that's worth. So of those options, I guess I would go Henderson. I guess I would go Henderson. Yeah, you could just leave him in. Let's see. 10-team PPR. Fields, Lawrence, Kyler, Saquon, Walker, Pollard, Javonte, nice. Tyreek, Ridley, Hopkins, Cooper, Waller. You could use a wide receiver. Is there anybody who really needs a quarterback? Because you could dangle Fields or Kyler. I probably would keep Lawrence. Is there anybody who could use? Yeah, I guess I would keep the Walker Charbonnet combo because if Walker goes down, you have Charbonnet. Could you? I would be looking to get a wide receiver, Patrick. Could you use one of those quarterbacks? Not. I would want to keep Trevor Lawrence, but you could use Fields or Kyler and maybe package with either Hopkins or Cooper to try to find a wide receiver upgrade. You could use a wide receiver. If you're willing to include, not that I'm not saying definitively do this, but if you're willing to include Saquon or Pollard, then you can ask for like an AJ Brown or or a Jamar Chase. You can't because you're talking about a stud RB1. You can ask for a stud wide receiver one. Or you could try to do something smaller, maybe Fields and Javonte for I don't know. Waddle, Ayuk, Olave. Something like that. I would take one of those quarterbacks not named Trevor Lawrence and maybe take Javonte Williams and try to get a strong wide receiver too. Or you could take one of those stud running backs and get a stud wide receiver one to attack, to pair with Tyreek. If everyone's set at all right, if everyone is set at quarterback, which makes sense in 10 team, I would probably dangle either Pollard or Barkley. I mean, I guess you could throw Walker in there as well. Throw in either Hopkins or Cooper and at whoever has AJ Brown, could they use Hopkins and a good running back and a depth wide receiver, and you get a strong wide receiver and a depth running back in return? Or whoever has Jamar Chase, do they need a running back? Could you offer one of those stud running backs and either Hopkins and Cooper for Jamar Chase and a depth running back? Or you could go smaller and say Javonte and either Hopkins or Cooper for maybe somebody like Ayuk or Waddle. Something like that. That would be my suggestion. You need you need a wide receiver. Ridley, Hopkins, Cooper, all good names on paper, but all inconsistent right now. Maybe you keep Ridley because you have Lawrence, so you keep the stack. So maybe try to use Cooper and Hopkins as a depth piece along with one of those stud running backs or to get a stud wide receiver and a depth running back, or Hopkins or Cooper with Javonte for Ayuk or Waddle and I don't know a depth running back. Something like that. The guy that has AJ Brown needs running backs? Yeah. I would be going to him and I'd be like, take either one of Saquon, Walker, and Pollard with either Hopkins or Cooper and give me AJ Brown and one of the depth running backs that you do have. Something like that. He has ETN and Sanders. Well, I don't want Sanders. And he's not going to give you ETN. Does he have a decent depth running back? Like a Jalen Warren or something? Or does he have Kyron Williams on IR? You could like stash him. Something like that. Oh, okay. So you have Saquon and you have James Conner. So you gave up Gibbs and Brees to get Mixon and Hawkinson. All right, that softens the blow a little bit. You have other running backs that you're able to lean on. Okay, fine, fair enough. I mean, yeah, not bad. It's not bad. It feels like a lot. Oh, he does have Warren. Look at that. Yeah, one of either Saquon, Pollard, or Walker, whoever you're most willing to part with either Cooper or Hopkins for AJ Brown and Jalen Warren. I would give that a whirl. If you're comfortable parting with one of those three running backs. Something like that. Let's see. Falcons, Jags, or Chargers defense. Falcons have the Titans on the road. Jags are on the road against Pittsburgh. Chargers are at home against the Bears. The Jags? Maybe the Jags? They're just better than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Even though they're on the road, I expect them to play with a lead, which gives the Jags defense an opportunity against a boring, stale Pittsburgh offense. The Jags, they're not in a bad spot tomorrow, even though they're on the road. The Jags, I mean, the Jags have been pretty opportunistic. They've got multiple turnovers in 5 of 7 games this year. And in that 6th game, they have a pick 6. Week 1, 2 fumble recoveries and a pick. Week 2, fumble recovery and a pick. Week 3, they got shellacked by Houston of all teams because, of course. Week 4, fumble recovery and 2 picks. Week 5 against Buffalo, fumble recovery and a pick. Week 6 against Indy, fumble recovery and 3 interceptions. And then last week against New Orleans, they got a pick 6. The sacks have been a little inconsistent, but the turnovers have been there. And the Pittsburgh Steelers offense with Matt Canada calling the shots is not that scary. The Jags? I guess I would go the Jags. I'll go the Jags. I'll go the Jags defense. I would roll the dice on them. The Falcons are also safe because they're playing a backup quarterback that I don't think anybody believes in. Whether it's Malik Willis or Will Levis. I think Will Levis is going to get the start, so that's a good spot for the Falcons. But the Falcons, I don't have as much confidence on in the Falcons on the road as I do Jacksonville on the road. I'll say the Jags. And as far as Javonte, Sutton, or Henderson in full PPR, of these options, I think I lean Javonte. He has looked a lot better recently. It's going to snow in Denver tomorrow, or that's the forecast anyway. They should be looking to run the ball. And Javonte has looked a lot better the past couple of weeks. He had a touchdown called back on a holding penalty that would not have stopped him from scoring. And on top of that, he had 15 carries for 82 yards, which is pretty damn good. I would go Javonte. I'll go Javonte. Now, Falcons or Cowboys? I'm going Cowboys. They're at home. They're the better team than the Rams. Matthew Stafford is playing well, but the Cowboys are one of the best units in the NFL, even with the loss of Trayvon Diggs. Cowboys. Play the Cowboys. Do I play any Kansas City player in the snow? I mean, you got to play Mahomes and you got to play Kelsey. You're not sitting those dudes. And you're playing you're playing Pacheco too. You're 100% playing Pacheco. If you don't want to play the wide receivers, if you don't want to play Rashee Rice, that's fine. He's the only receiver worth considering. That's fine. If you don't want to play the wide receivers, that's fine. But you got to play Mahomes, you got to play Kelsey, and you got to play Pacheco. If you have any one of those three guys tomorrow, doesn't matter that it's snowing. You have to play those guys. You got to play your studs. You got to play your studs. Now, for Denver, I'll play Javonte, given, depending on my other options. But if you want to pivot off of the rest of the Broncos passing offense, I'm okay with that. But you got to play your stud Chiefs. You got to play Mahomes. You got to play Kelsey. You got to play Pacheco. Cowboys, Seahawks or the Cowboys? That's a coin flip. I guess I'd give the slight nod to the the Cowboys are the better unit. The Cowboys are the better defense. The Seahawks are playing a backup quarterback. The difference between them and, say, like a team like the Falcons who are playing a backup quarterback is that the Seahawks are at home. They're defending home turf against P.J. Walker. The Falcons are on the road, against Will Levis. And while I like that matchup for them, they are still on the road. Just comparing the Seahawks situation to the Falcons situation, not the Cowboys. The Cowboys are the better unit here. But Matthew Stafford is playing pretty well. It's close. I'll give a slight nod to the Seahawks just because they're at home against a backup quarterback instead of being on the road against a backup quarterback, like a team like the Falcons. The Cowboys are at home as well, but Matthew Stafford is playing pretty good football at the moment. So I'll give the slight nod to the Seahawks. Slight nod to the Seahawks. Najee Hopkins or Foreman. I can't play Hopkins. He's got AJ Terrell on the other side defending him, and he's catching balls from Will Levis. I can't play Hopkins. And Foreman is tough to trust in that. I'll go Najee. It's going to rain in Pittsburgh tomorrow, but the rain is expected to subside. Like it might be heavy at kickoff, but it's expected to move out of the area as the game moves on. I'll take Najee at home. He's still getting volume. He's still getting 15 touches a game, even though it's not very productive. Scored last week at home. You figure he gets the rock 15 more times. I'll take Najee. I don't feel great about it, but I'll take Najee. And yes, one more time, you play Mahomes tomorrow. You can't worry about weather with Mahomes. Can't worry about weather with Mahomes. Patrick, you were offered Jefferson for Ridley. Yeah, that's the only concern with Justin Jefferson. Are the Vikings playing for something at the end of the year, which incentivizes Jefferson to come back? Will he be back definitively after the 4-game IR stint? It sounded like it was up in the air when he initially went on IR. The Vikings have a late week 13 bye. So do they hold him out through that bye week? Do they hold him out through those 7 games, the 4 that he's on IR, and then the 2 after he's eligible to come back plus the bye week? Do they hold him out for all 7 of those weeks? Now you'd have him for the fantasy playoffs, but you got to get there first. Got to get there first. I guess that's a fine roll of the dice. If you have good, you have Tyreek Hill, but then you're down to DeAndre Hopkins and Amari Cooper, who is playing without Deshaun Watson right now. You're not going to have Justin Jefferson until maybe week 11. And that's if he's able to come back without any limitations after the IR stint, which I don't know if we know right now. I don't know that I would do that trade this week because Ridley, despite the rain, Ridley's got a good matchup tomorrow. The Steelers are giving up a lot of production to outside wide receivers. Ridley's got a good chance to bounce back tomorrow despite the rain. And again, it looks like it's going to rain pretty good at the beginning of the game in Pittsburgh, but just look at the forecast. It's expected to move out of the area as the game moves on, as time moves on. So it might not be as big of an issue, the rain, in like the second half of the game. And it's a good matchup by the numbers based on what Pittsburgh is giving up to opposing wide receivers who play on the outside, which is Calvin Ridley. I would wait 1 week. And if you play each other, you are giving him a piece that can help him tomorrow, whereas you're getting something that can't help you no matter what tomorrow. I would wait. I would wait, Patrick. I would hold. I would hold at least 1 week. I would hold at least 1 week. Yeah, I'd hold at least 1 week. Should you trade Keenan Allen and CeeDee Lamb for Tyreek Hill? I get the thought process. But I don't think I'm doing that. I agree with I kind of agree with this with the sentiment of that Chaka said. I hope I said that correctly. If you've got other crazy good options at wide receiver, then okay, fine. But who are you starting alongside Tyreek? Yeah, like who else are you starting with Tyreek Hill if you give up Keenan Allen and CeeDee Lamb? Is it DeAndre Hopkins and, you know, some other underperforming wide receiver? Then I don't like that as much. Depends on who, yeah, who are your other options other than Tyreek after the trade? I guess that would be my follow-up question to that. Rice, Williams, or Henderson. You need to pick two. Is that Javonte Williams? I hope it's not Jamison Williams. Is it Javonte Williams? In half PPR, you're picking two out of those three. Rice concerns me a little bit because of the weather tomorrow. His involvement has been very good recently, but it is expected to snow pretty good. I guess I maybe roll the dice with him over Henderson. Yeah, is that Javonte Williams or Jamison Williams? If it's Javonte, then I would say Javonte definitively, and then I don't know, it is Javonte. All right, I would go Javonte. I would go Javonte, and then I would say this is a gut call here. If you're worried about the snow with Rashee Rice, then go Henderson. If you're not worried about the snow, then I would go Rashee Rice. But Javonte definitely. Henderson's got a tough matchup against the Cowboys, although we do expect him to get decent volume. Rice has been the dude at wide receiver who has emerged for the Chiefs, but it could be a tough spot tomorrow with the snow. If you're worried about the snow, I might be a little worried about the snow, then maybe just go Henderson. But if you're thinking to yourself, I'm not worried about the snow, it's Patrick Mahomes, he's the man, like that offense is it'll do its thing no matter what, then I'm fine with going with Rice, but I would say Javonte definitively. I guess I give the slight nod to Henderson because I know that he doesn't have any weather issues in Dallas. I give the slight nod to Henderson. Start three between Pacheco, Gibbs, Bijan, Mostert, Metcalf, Ayuk. Those first three running backs. I don't want to sit Ayuk, but especially with Purdy being like he cleared concussion protocol, so you know Ayuk should be in line for decent volume without Debo once again, but I don't think I can. Despite what happened with Bijan last week, I got to go back to the well with him. You absolutely need to start Gibbs against the Raiders with no David Montgomery, and I would start Pacheco in the snow against the Broncos, who are getting gashed on the ground. Those three running backs, the first three running backs: Pacheco, Gibbs, Bijan. Those are the guys I'm going with. Those three running backs. Take the volume. Take the volume. Let's see. Judy, Christian Watson, or Deontay this week in full PPR. Watson is your ceiling play, like boom bust. If you need the upside, if you're looking at your situation and you're just like, I need to swing for the fences, then Watson. Deontay is your safe play. Deontay is your safe play. So it just depends on what you need. If it's an even split, if the matchup is a toss up, maybe just play it safe and go Deontay. But if you're an underdog and you think you need upside, you need the big play, then Watson. In full PPR, In a vacuum, I would give the slight nod to Deontay. Probably just fire up Deontay, but if I'm a big underdog and I want to swing for a big play, then maybe go Watson. But I think I think I would probably just in full PPR, I might just fire up Deontay Johnson. Devontae Smith or Jacoby Myers in standard scoring. Myers does have Jimmy G back. Devontae Smith has been up and down this year. Smith had a good game against Washington, 7 for 78 back in week 4. He has been very good in this matchup historically when the Eagles play the Commanders. Uh Slight nod to Myers. Myers is your safe play. Devontae Smith is your ceiling play. If you think you can play it safe, Myers. If you think you need to, swing for a big play, then that might be Devontae Smith. I guess I give the slight nod to Myers since he has Jimmy Garoppolo back. It's close. I'll give the slight nod to Myers. Drop Pitts. No. Oh, you have Kincaid. No, I'm not dropping Kyle Pitts. You can alternate those guys based on matchups. I like Gus Edwards a lot. If you can find a way to get Gus on your roster, I'm okay with it, but I'm not dropping Kyle Pitts. I know that he's frustrating, but there will be Dawson Knox is likely coming back at some point this season. That could cannibalize Kincaid at in the stretch run. And I know that Jonnu Smith is currently doing the same thing to Pitts, but Pitts is too talented. I don't want to drop Pitts outright. I don't want to do that. Unless it's dire straits for you at running back, then I would try to make a trade. I don't want to drop Pitts outright. I don't want to drop Pitts outright. Attitude, that's a good-looking team. Strong wide receiver options. Upside at running back. And you have Bijan, so good running back options. You have Metcalf for, I guess, A.J. Brown's bye week. Or if an injury happens. No, that's a good team. I can't imagine you're winless. I can't imagine you're worse than, say, 3-4. Maybe if you want to try to find a better quarterback. Goff and Stroud combined are okay. Maybe they're a little inconsistent. Maybe you could use some of your depth on your bench. Maybe try to flip Madison for if you can find somebody who needs some running back help, but maybe they have a better quarterback. Mostert should be able to net you one of the better options at quarterback. Package Mostert and Metcalf for a stud. You're not going to be able to move Judy. You could try to find somebody who's got a good quarterback, but they're hurting in certain spots. So you could try to target. You could use Mostert or Madison. Everyone's afraid to make trades. That's annoying. All right. Well, you've got good running back depth. If nobody wants it, then hang on to it. I mean, it's a good team. That's a good squad. I don't think you're not in dire straits. You're not in desperate need to make a move. So if everybody's afraid, then just keep your talent. But yeah, I mean, you could dangle Mostert out there for a big quarterback upgrade. If somebody doesn't want to go for it, then that's a good collection of talent. I think you're okay if nobody wants to make a move, then you're all right. Then then your team is fine. But I get that it's frustrating when people are afraid to make trades. I think a lot of people play in leagues like that, unfortunately. But it's a good squad. It's a good team. Mixon or Tank Dell? Got to be Mixon. Fire up the bell cow running back. I'm not worried about the matchup. I know it's not great, but Mixon is getting all of the work. The Bengals are, you figure we got to imagine the bye week had to help Joe Burrow get right, get the calf injury a little healthier. Mixon is getting all of the volume. Chase Brown just went on IR, so he's not going to, he's not taking any opportunities away. Mixon's going to continue to be the bell cow, even in a bad matchup. Play your bell cow running back. Play Mixon. And yeah, I would go Miami of those options. Cleveland's the best unit of those three, but it's a tough spot on the road in Seattle. Seattle's got a good offense. And yeah, you might be cannibalizing yourself a little bit because you have a couple of Giants going to play Miami. Mac Jones ain't all that, and they're at home. I would just play the Dolphins. That's fine. Miami's been a bit of a house of horrors for New England over the years, as long as Belichick's been the coach. Even back during the Brady days, Miami has been like a weird spot for the New England Patriots. I would chase that. Yeah, that's fine. If you're leaning Miami, go with Miami. I think that's where I would go as well. I think that's fine. I think that's fine. Jordan Love, Sam Howell, or Russ this week. Russ is a little more concerning in the snow. At least Howell is probably going to have to throw the ball a lot against the Eagles. And he did okay against the Eagles when they last played each other in Philly. He did all right. Howell did. Love has just not played well recently, so it's tough to get behind him. I think by default, I go Howell. I know he had a bad game last week, but he played decently against the Eagles the last time they played, 290 and a touchdown, and he ran for 40 yards. Love hasn't played well recently over the course of a couple of games, and Russ is in the snow tomorrow against a good defense. Howell's against a good defense as well, but he's going to have to throw. I guess I would go Howell by default. You're 5-1. Yeah, then I mean, honestly, then if it ain't broke, you're 5-1. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a good team. It's a good team. If people don't want to trade, then it's like, all right, I'll keep rolling out my really good squad. Works for me. Pick two running backs between Mostert, Saquon, Walker, or Pacheco. Yeah, happy Halloween to you as well. These are like four RB1s in full PPR. You got to go Saquon. I know that's against the Jets. The Jets are a little bit tougher, but you got to play Saquon Barkley. You got to play Saquon. And then I would go Pacheco. I would go Saquon and Pacheco. I love Walker. Walker's awesome, but he is in a tough spot. Again, the Cleveland Browns have a good defense. So that is the difference for me. And he was on the injury report this week for whatever that's worth. He missed Wednesday and Thursday practices. He doesn't have an injury designation, but he was on the injury report. And it's a tough matchup against Cleveland, even at home. Pacheco's going up against Denver, who is dog water on defense. And in the snow, you figure he's going to get a lot of opportunities with the bad weather. And then Saquon is Saquon. Mostert, and Mostert himself is on the injury report as well. I know Mostert has been that dude this year, but he's on the injury report himself. I'll take Saquon and Pacheco here. But best of luck. Let's get these dubs. That will do it for me. I do have to wrap this up. Apologies to anybody who might be coming in late. I will be available tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, right before the slate for any last-minute thoughts. If you want to run anything by me tomorrow before the slate begins, 11 a.m. Eastern, one more start-sit live stream before Week 8 begins. I will be available for a bit. Everybody have a great rest of your Saturday evening. If you don't come back tomorrow, no problem. Let's get these dubs. But if you want to run anything by me at the last minute, 11 a.m. Eastern, I will be available for a bit tomorrow for some final start sit thoughts if you would like to check in on anything at the last minute. Thank you, everybody, for the engagement. Thank you, Steven, for the supers. Much appreciated. Appreciate my members coming in and hanging out as well, and everybody in general for your patience as I get through the questions. Hopefully it helps. Let's get these wins. Thanks, everybody.